That's it.
I thought it came on automatically. And welcome to the Stronger Place Select Committee on the 4th of November. I will take item 1 and I'll read the webcasting introduction. This meeting will be webcast. Members are reminded the need to activate their microphones before speaking. The Chairman will read the following announcement. That's me, I think. The Chairman would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Macready.
Okay, and substitute members?
Councillor Janet Whitehouse is substituting for Councillor Macready.
Item 4, declarations of interest. No one's interested. Okay, item 5, notes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 8. Any comments on the previous minutes? Can I take those as agreed? Thank you, members. Okay, item 6, the terms of reference and the work programme. The work programme has been, the terms of reference has been approved, and we are working to those new terms of reference, and as suggested by Councillor Kane, I think they're being considered by other committees as well on that basis. And the work programme, you will notice, has been enhanced. We have now got quite a number of items on the work programme. One deliberate mistake, which seems that the January meeting was inadvertently deleted. So we are having a January meeting, and if members could actually note that will be, I don't know, what was the date of that? Do we know? Yeah, 13th, right, okay. Well, of course it's on there as well, isn't it? Yes. Okay, so any comments on the work programme? Okay, just a few points. The item 8, which is the Town Centre Progress Report, that will be a written report and be presented. There's also a report in March on taxes. And there's one other January report on the next page under item 17, which is enforcement. And I believe Councillor Burrows will be coming along to the committee to present a report on enforcement. So if any members are interested, besides the committee, I think that will be quite an interesting meeting to attend. Okay, are there any other comments on the work programme? Anything to add? Any suggestions or changes? We've got a fairly robust programme now that I think it's starting to move forward correctly. Okay, well, let's move on. So we have invited Councillor Lee Scott here this evening, who is the recently appointed Highways Portfolio Holder for Essex. And he's been doing quite a lot of work around the county. I don't think he stands still for more than 5 minutes, so we've got him here tonight. And we haven't got a report formally, but we're just asked him to introduce himself, and we're open for questions. What I would say is we don't particularly want individual local issues that can be dealt with outside, but if there are any sort of issues that people would like to question in general about highways and transport, I think, as well, isn't it? So I will hand over to Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman, and can I thank yourself and members for inviting me tonight. When I took over the portfolio back in after the elections in May, I said that I wanted to go around the entire county meeting with districts, parishes, and that's exactly what I've been doing. And today alone, I was earlier today in Witham, here tonight, Chelmsford this afternoon, and tomorrow I'm back out on the road again. And I felt it was important to actually go and see things for myself, see some of the issues. My portfolio covers everything from, I hate to even say it, but potholes, which is probably my biggest part of my 200 odd emails I will get a day. Buses, trains, coastal erosion, cycling, walking, general maintenance of roads, footpaths, basically you name it, anything to do with highways comes under me and my team. Now, I may be a masochist, but I love every day of what I'm doing, even some of the abusive emails that I get. If I may, I'd like to just very briefly touch on a bit about myself and what I've done and how I came to be doing this. I started out as a councillor in the London Borough of Redbridge and a cabinet member, and then in 2005 became a member of Parliament for Ilford North, which I did till 2015 when I so carelessly lost my seat. And then after that became the Prime Minister's Special Advisor on local government, communities and various other aspects. I then gave a pledge to my wife that I would never stand for public office again, and I guess a bit like manifesto commitments, I broke it, and here I am today before you. What do I think the biggest problems facing the entire county is? Is it potholes? No, it's not. I don't actually think that will be the biggest part of my mailbag. I think flooding is going to be the biggest part of my mailbag as time goes on. We're experiencing more deluges of rain in short, sharp bursts than I think has ever been seen in recent history. Therefore, we have to tackle that. We're looking at new schemes, and one in an area which particularly has suffered from flooding, and tragically so, is Canvey Island, where we are doing an experiment or a test of something called, and I didn't invent the name for this, but it's called Happy Rain. I'm not quite sure why, but it's a new technique where you put in certain plants, certain gullies, certain stonage, which slows, even in a deluge, the rain down so that a drainage system can cope with it. If that does work, we would want to roll that out elsewhere, and I'm hoping it does. We launched that only a few weeks ago, but we do have to take flooding very, very seriously. I'm sure in your mailbags, and even in my own division, where we hadn't necessarily experienced flooding before, we are now experiencing it, and it's affecting people's homes and their lives, and we have to tackle that. What I really wanted to do tonight was for you to ask me any questions you want to ask me, and not, as I think as Chairman said, of a more general nature of a specific pothole in a particular turning, but should you have that, either through the Chairman or direct to myself, you can email me, and you will always get a reply. It may not always be the reply you want, but you will get a reply. We also are looking at the fact of, I have a finite budget. So wherever I go, I will make it clear to people, if something is dangerous, I will do my utmost to make sure that is fixed. If it's cosmetic, I cannot give the same guarantee because I do have a finite budget. And I'm sure, no different to your own council, all budgets are going to be tight over these coming years. But we genuinely care and want to make a difference. Will we always get it right? No, we won't. And I'm the first person, if I get something wrong, to put my hands up and say, I'm sorry, and try and rectify it. But what I'd really like to do tonight is for you to ask me questions, because at 8 o'clock I'm going over to do another meeting similar to this elsewhere. So any questions you'd like to ask me, I will now sit down and answer those questions to the best of my ability. At the end of tonight, if you've liked any of my answers, I am indeed Lee Scott, the Highways Cabinet Member for Essex County Council. If you haven't, my name is Councillor Alan Light. No, it's okay.
Okay. Councillor Bassett.
Thank you. Welcome. I think one of the things that a lot of people have been concerned about is the repairs on the road. I know you've got a finite budget. What's the budget looking like? Because, shall we say, we're seeing a longer and longer delays on maintenance work, repair work. And the other thing is, I've noticed the quality of the repairs has been going down as well over the last few years. They've not lasted, they've been in, and quite often we've seen things where within a few months it's back to how it was.
Well, I'm pleased to say that hopefully, but a lot will depend on our Cabinet Member for Finance, who I think you know quite well, because I believe he's a leader of your council as well, that my budgets will be intact. Let's put it that way. That's my aim, because we realise how important this is. The answer to your question on the quality of work, if anyone has that happen, and it is reported to me, whether it be Ringway Jacobs or indeed a contractor, they have to do it free of charge and replace it. It's not paid for again by the taxpayer, but it is important it is reported, because in blunt terms can't be everywhere the whole time. The timing of work, we are trying to work through the backlog, and there was a problem during the pandemic, and I know lots of people use the pandemic as an excuse, but if one member of the team went down of a work party, that whole team ended up isolating. So there was an issue during that period, but we are getting back to normal. And as I go around the county, I'm sure you are seeing the amount of roadworks which are now being done around the county, and that will continue till we get up to date. So I hope I can put your mind at rest on that. But if there is work that you do not think is right, then let me know.
Kerry?
Going to come back slightly on that. It's not only the work that, shall we say, Essex Highways do and Ringway Jacobs. We're seeing an awful lot of problems where the utility companies are coming on board. They're doing a shoddy job and don't finish it off. Different crews. Just where I live, they keep digging up the road for various reasons, and when they've finished, it's absolutely dreadful state.
That indeed is a different matter. And if a utility company is causing problems and damage, then I believe it's their responsibility to put that right. I also would say that one of the concerns I have, and it's a very difficult one to tackle, is that if you have seen where building work has taken place on an individual property, or indeed maybe a larger building of a block of flats, that the contractors should leave the road and the conditions around it as they were before they started that work. We're seeing too many of our curbs and our pavements destroyed, and at the end of the day, we're left to pick up the bill. So that's something I want to see tackled as well. But I understand fully what you're saying, and as far as utilities companies go, I'm having meetings as things go forward to actually make them honour and do the work that they should do and leave the things as they were before they got there.
Okay. Councillor Whitehouse?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to raise two issues. The first is pavements. I'm very concerned about the state of the pavements around here. We hear about many people having falls. They are in a terrible condition. And, we're trying to encourage people to walk. And yet, the pavements around Epping and Thaden Boys are terrible. Some of them haven't had anything for decades. I can't remember when we had that cabling through all the towns and villages, but a lot of the pavements still show, the result of the cabling. I just wondered, how high are pavements on your priority list?
Very high. So if there is a particular area and I'm notified about it, I will get officers down to inspect. As I said right at the start, if something is dangerous, I will get it fixed. If it's cosmetic, it is a different matter. But if we want to encourage walking, as I do, if we want to encourage cycling, as I do, you've got to look after these things. So the answer is, if there's a specific area, and I'm not intending that we go into specific areas tonight, but if you do it either through the chairman or direct to me, I will take that up.
Thank you. I was going to ask what was the best way of bringing it up, because we brought it up through the normal sort of channels and nothing seems to happen. My second issue is when we have roadworks, there's all those signs that are put out, and then they're often put at the side of the road, and they can be left there for ages and ages and ages. And I just wonder what sort of system they have, the people who do the roadworks, for actually checking stuff out and checking it in. It must be such a waste of money when you see this stuff left by the side of the road for months and months and months.
To the questions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll be up and down like a jack in a box. They're meant to take them away when they finish the work. So if they're left there, I will take that up with officers to ask that those be taken away after the jobs are finished. But I have seen what you're saying. So I think on the Manor Road, Chairman, there is a sign that was left there. I had it recently taken away. But yes, I have seen that happen.
Councillor Jennings?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if these are in your remit really, but I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about smart motorways. Is that in your remit? It's not, no. Second one is what are you doing to encourage members of the public to use public transport rather than their own cars? That's my first.
We're launching something which you may have heard about or you may not, called Bus Back Better. Bus Back Better is a national campaign which we're signed into and has gone through our cabinet to say that we have to firstly encourage people to get back to pre-pandemic levels of using public transport, which is not happening as we stand because there's more remote working than there has been in the past. But B, we have to liaise with our bus companies on a number of different aspects. One, to make sure that as many of their vehicles are environmentally friendly as can possibly be. Two, to offer the public the service that they want to be able to get from A to B, because if we're going to encourage people to use public transport, we have to give them the opportunity to be able to get from A to B when they want and how they want. Various new technology excuse me, can come in. This is an aspiration. It's not something that I'm going to say is going to happen in weeks, but I'd like to see a service on hopper buses particularly, such as they have for Uber, where you actually have an app on your phone and you can tell when a bus is going to be in a certain area, when it's going to actually use modern technology to enhance people back onto buses. So it is vitally important, and you'll see a lot more of that over these coming months under the banner of Bus Back Better. Bus Back Better. Bus Back Better. It's a bit of a tongue twister. It wasn't me that invented it.
Councillor, did you want to come back?
My final question, and again it may not be your remit, it's about putting in charging points for electric vehicles. I think that's, we obviously haven't got enough electric charging points for people to use their electric vehicles to travel distances. And I just wanted to know what you're doing to, improve that situation.
If we want people to switch to electric vehicles, the charging points, particularly in our areas where we have quite a number of apartments, where you haven't got an individual driveway to put a charging point of your own, we have to have more charging points. What are we trying to do about it? Well, I'm looking at new ways of coming up with funding to do things. And I will share with you one of the ways that I want to do EV charging points. There are many companies which it is in their interests to sell EV cars. And I'm asking them to sponsor some of the EV charging points. So if an EV charging point has on it sponsored by Jack Jones Garages or whatever, I don't think anyone's going to be offended if it gives them a charging point to charge it. On top of that, I, at this moment, was considering changing my car for an electric vehicle. But as you said, there are two problems here. One, the number of charging points, and it's not just in our own area, it's across the board, really. And two, what distance you'll be able to get out of it. I go round the county. Today, I must have done 250 miles. So it's important. But the new technology that's coming out, there's a new charger coming out that can give a full charge in 30 minutes. It's not available yet, but it will be coming. So the technology is coming on every single month, every single year. And that's important. What is also important is that the EV charging points are the right EV charging points. Do you all remember back to when we started with videos where you had VHS, you had Betamax, you had Philips? At the end of it, it was VHS that came. You're too young to remember, I know. Yeah, it's just me that remembers. It's okay, you remember as well, don't you, Chairman?
Yeah.
One became prominent. That's got to happen with EV, where you know that the charging point is going to fit the car you're buying. And that's also a little bit of a problem at the moment, but those will all be overcome. And I genuinely believe that EV will be the way forward, but an even better way forward is getting on a bicycle or getting on public transport. But I would say that, wouldn't I?
Thank you. Councillor Owen?
Thank you, Chairman. We kind of touched on it already, actually, but I was going to make the point on buses. Are we as a council going to insist that when tenders are up, that the new buses must be electric, is my first question. And then the second one was really a statement. I do cycle, and the state of the cycling lanes in Epping Forest, I mean, it's pretty much dangerous is the word I'd use.
Well, you'll be delighted to know that on the cycling lanes, we are putting substantial sums of money into improving our cycle lanes. On the side of the buses and pollution, yes, when tenders are up, we are putting into those tenders and renegotiating with our suppliers that their vehicles are as economical and as efficient and as environmentally friendly as humanly possible. We have to take into account as well that that won't happen overnight. We can't just expect the companies, when patronage is actually quite low at this present juncture, to do that. But the answer is, to your question, yes, that is being looked at in partnership and working together with the bus companies and our costs. And that also includes home-to-school transport as well.
Yeah, come here.
Would that come over cost? I guess my point is, are we insisting that it's electric, or are we just saying it would be a nice to have?
Tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to see a plant that does hydrogen buses, which is also another way forward as well. The tenders are not up at the moment, and the new tendering process is being gone through. So I would be delighted to come back on another occasion and answer that question in full. But the aim is to have environmentally friendly operations wherever we possibly can.
Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chairman. Lee, let's get back to budgets. Is there any crossover between the planned repairs on the road and the maintenance repairs on the roads? Because I've seen situations where work's gone on planned projects and the dangerous maintenance projects have been left. And I'd like to know if it's a budget problem. Can you not switch some money from here to there? How does it work?
I seem to get the mic, that's better. The answer to you is yes, of course you can. And I go back to where I started, that if something's dangerous, I don't want it to be, I want it fixed. I don't want to see our roads, our pavements, our footpaths dangerous. So wherever possible, we're doing that. The budgets are always, if I had double the budget I currently have, it still wouldn't be enough money. It's impossible to ever, potholes breed in captivity, I'm positive of it. But what I have really tried to do as well, the potholes that people, or give people the most concern, are the last one they see at night and the first one they see in the morning. So invariably it's the one in their own turning. And that's important, and I want those tackled. Can I touch on something else, which I should have mentioned at the start? We're also, on the environmental side, I went to see, and we have purchased, an electronic digger, which is as quiet as you could possibly be for any digger, but is EV. So even on our own equipment, it's important we change over as soon as possible and get rid of some of the older ones, the more polluting ones, and switch to electronic repair vehicles as well. But there's such technology coming now, particularly on some of the pothole repairs, where people can sit in a van. I saw had a demonstration on drones the other day that go up where we normally have to get people in a boat on a river to go up at a bridge. We can now have a guy sitting in a van and put a drone up to see and get exactly the same detail, which is not only more economical, but also saves a lot of time. You can do something in a day that used to take a week. And before someone asks me, I'm going to tell you, you know that we're switching all of our lampposts to LED across the county. We're rolling it out everywhere to have LED lights, which will be more environmentally friendly and also save us a lot of money because they use far less electricity.
Councillor Heather?
It's all right, I've still got mine on, I hadn't finished.
Oh, you haven't finished?
No.
Carry on.
All right, I was talking about budgets. In the same vein, you have a bunch of roadmen working on a planned project, and round the corner you may have a pothole which is dangerous. Can you switch those men from the planned project to the maintenance project, which is dangerous? Because I haven't seen that.
Microphone. Microphone.
You can tell I'm going about the whole county. I was in Basildon it could have been yesterday, it could have been the day before. I can't remember which one, but I was in Basildon and a team were doing planned maintenance, replacing some curbstone, and then went and repaired something else. So yes is the answer to your question.
I mean, I hope you say that, but that's good, yes.
Any other questions? Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, I should at this stage say I'm actually Chairman of Trustees for Community Transport for Epping and Harlow, and been heavily involved in Bus Back Better, and also the partnership which they're looking at, asking for comments of how it all fits together. One of the things in answering your question, we're looking at electric buses, but the cost is phenomenal, especially if you're community transport, which is only there really to prevent social exclusion and bring lots of different areas and people that otherwise wouldn't get anywhere. So we do work on a shoestring, and with charities we're not expected to make a surplus, and in fact we haven't during COVID. But we are used quite extensively by Essex as a supplier of last resort, where bus companies have said, I don't like that route anymore, I can't make money on it. And we've been asked on several routes, can we just cover it, can we keep it going? And we've done that. Now, we would love to buy electric buses, etc., providing they're the right technology, but where we need certain types of buses to do that sort of role, the mini buses, the electric buses don't tend to lend very easily into that, and the money they're asking is an absolute fortune, almost double what you can get an ordinary diesel bus for. Would there be any plans to help us with grants or interest-free loans to actually purchase into those?
There are two things on that point. One, you're perfectly right. It is more expensive, considerably, to get an EV hopper bus or bus in general than one that's not. In the budget, there was an announcement made, and I'm awaiting, we won't know till December, about what is being done by central government to assist us, to assist you. We won't know that till December, but I am told there's something in there that take into account that very problem you've just said, because there's a double problem there. If we want to get people onto public transport, and if we want that public transport to be sustainable and also environmentally friendly, there is a cost that's going to go with that, and that has to be recognised. And it is. So, again, on my next visit, should I be invited back, you may choose not to invite me back, but should I be invited back, I will update you on what comes out in December.
Councillor Heather. You got it this time.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that this is not actually your remit at all, and it's probably a matter for legislation, but we briefly spoke about damage to pavements by utilities. The biggest cause of damage to pavements is vehicles parking on them. Can you personally apply pressure to get legislation passed within the county to prevent pavement parking, which also would be another stream of revenue for your budget by finding the people that tend to ignore it and would sooner see someone in a wheelchair use the road? Thank you.
There is meant to be national legislation going through that allows us to do in Essex what is already done in London. There are some areas we have to recognise where the roads are so narrow that that would not be possible. It won't be as, there's certainly some, as I go around some of the rural areas where the roads are so narrow that it would be very difficult to say do not park up on the curb. But to have the ability to say in other areas where it is possible don't do it, yes, the answer to your question is we will, I am lobbying, and but on top of that it does have to be taken into account where those roads are and what the best usage will be.
Okay. One more question then from Councillor Jennings, and then I've got a final question.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm coming back on a completely different subject now, I'm afraid. It's safe streets for schools. Very keen, really, on setting this up in certain areas around the schools, particularly in Loughton. It's just a dreadful situation. It's drop-off and pick-up times. And I know you don't have a policy on safe streets for schools, but are you thinking of bringing one in at all?
Yes, school streets is something that I do plan on bringing in. We've had tragedies in our own area, in my own division. The tragedy that happened in Debden, at Debden High School, I think it was December 2019, if I'm not mistaken. We recognise that A, we need to have lower speed limits in those, but on top of that, what is really important is that people feel safe for their children to walk to school. Now, there will be some, and this won't be popular with everybody, if you say that at this time you're going to have to park, heavens forbid, 500 metres away from a school, or most children going to some schools live very close. We need to make it safe that the parents are happy for them to walk there. So the answer to your question is yes, categorically, looking at school streets is something that we're doing, and we're going to be putting them in.
Right, thank you. Now, we've got one question from Councillor Morgan.
Two questions, actually.
Two questions.
Thank you. Couple of quick questions. In our rural areas, the tree roads used to be inspected quite regularly. Does that still take place? And secondly, again in the past, when a contractor wanted to close a road, he had to have a licence to this. Do they still have to have a licences?
Yes, they do have to have a licence which has to be put in for a road closure, a road traffic order. And the first part of your question is, again, yes, that does still happen.
Okay, thank you.
Fine. Well, I've got a final question, which is about enforcement. So, NEPP is contracted to Essex County Council for enforcement in this part of the world. Could you say what is being done about enforcement and whether it's going to improve? Because we see lots of yellow lines, lots of restrictions, and people about parking on pavements. But if there's no enforcement to actually deal with that, people can continue to park on those illegal points. So if you could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman. There's two aspects to that, because not only enforcement of yellow lines, but enforcement of speed limits. You asked Councillor Jennings about school streets. You can have any speed limit you want, but if it's not enforced, it doesn't make a lot of difference, because somebody who's not going to obey a 30-mile-an-hour limit is not going to obey a 20-mile-an-hour limit. So what the Chairman asked is perfectly right. I've met with Roger Hurst, and you will be seeing a few things happen. Far more enforcement than you have ever seen before. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it's going to be done, because I know we're being broadcast, and that will tell everyone how it's going to be done. And if somebody does not obey the speed limit, they're going to be caught, and they will be ticketed. And I hope that will make people think long and hard about speeding. So the answer to that is enforcement is going to be stepped up. I'm having meetings with both NEP and SEP over these coming weeks, and also regular dialogue with Roger Hurst, our Police and Crime Commissioner, about how we do it. But can I just throw one in that isn't a question? Yeah? Enforcement generally, when people come to me and say the hedges are growing out over the pavement, can you cut them? And it's not our land, then we will be enforcing on the landowner that they do their responsibility and they cut their hedges. Because it should not fall on the taxpayer to have to do that when somebody else, it's their land. And we will be enforcing that as well. Enforcement is at the hub of a lot of the different problems that we have in highways and beyond. It's not the easiest thing to do because people don't like it, but we will be doing it.
Thank you very much.
Can I thank you for inviting me? I am going to go on to another meeting now, but I would be delighted to come back and answer any more questions you might have, plus give you an update on some of the things we've spoken about tonight. Thank you all, members. Thank you, Chair.
Would members like Councillor Scott to come back maybe in January or March? Yes, please. Yes? Oh dear. Thank you very much for coming along this evening.
Thank you all very much. Good evening.
That was quite an interesting dialogue.
Very good.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Rose Brooks is calling.
Yeah, I realised that. Okay, so that was a very useful dialogue. I think everyone appreciated that, and it's good for Councillor Scott, who's rushing around everywhere, really busy, to actually spend the time coming to Epping Forest. So I'll pass on your thanks formally to him after the meeting. So we move on to item 8, which is the review of off-street parking. So I'll hand over to James Warwick, pages 13 to 28.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the proposed report is to review the tariff regime on EFDC off-street car parks, which has not been increased since 2015. And the purpose is to ensure that the parking charges are sustainable to support the operation of car parks and to assist with the budget pressures as a result of COVID-19 that have impacted upon the maintenance and enhancement works. We've done a cost-benefit analysis and consultation with officers and with members, and we've worked with a parking consultant, RTA Associates, to propose a sustainable charging structure that balances the parking requirements and the needs of car park users. So we're asking you to consider this report before the report goes to Cabinet in December. So as you'll see from the report, the recommendations on the parking charges are based on the modelling that we propose to increase the existing tariffs by 20p for the first three kind of tiers of charging. So for 30 minutes, up to an hour, and for up to 2 hours, and then retain the tariffs for any stay above 2 hours. At the moment, we're at around about 80% pre-pandemic income levels in our car parks, and we haven't seen the commuter or the long stay parking return as much as we thought. The other recommendations are to extend full tariff on a Saturday, to apply all car parks across the districts to ensure consistency across the car parks. We've had a few requests from members of the public and from councillors to extend the 1 hour free parking on a Sunday to 2 hours across the district. And we want to retain kind of the free weekend offer and bank holiday parking during the month of December. I think that's been agreed for this year, and we want to keep that in there for future years, and continue free parking for blue badge holders and motorbikes. Then in terms of permit and season tickets, we're looking to align that with the current on-street charges, so that would be an increase from £50 to £55 per year. And we've done some analysis. We've done analysis on all the car parks, but we've identified some car parks that are underutilised at the moment. So we want to kind of look at the best use of those car parks and introduce business and residence permits. And the report makes reference specifically to Cornmill Car Park in Waltham Abbey, which is heavily underutilised, and Oakwood Hill East Car Park, which is on the industrial estate. We want to introduce kind of business permits in there. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, just a couple. We've got some. Oh, okay. Well, I wanted just to raise a couple of questions before we kick off with other people. You've got the mentioning of EV charging in there, and obviously there is a trade-off between making spaces available for electric vehicles and for ordinary vehicles, but we don't seem to have any statistics to identify the usage of these car parks. Is that something that could be produced so we could actually see over the terms what the impact's going to be of changes within the car parks? The other thing was, I did ask if there was a map available so members could actually see where these car parks are, because I don't think everybody knows where the car parks are in different parts of the district, but that's not available at the moment. Is that something that could be produced for the committee at some point?
Yes to both questions. So we've got detailed analysis on the occupancy levels of all our car parks, so we can provide that, and we can provide a map of where the locations of the car parks are.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings?
Thank you, Chair. Two issues I have. The first is, why don't you put charging points in all the car parks? There are, in Langston Road, I believe, there are about 5 charging points that are not being used. Why aren't they moved to other car parks then? If they're not being used, they have black bags over them, apparently. So they could be moved elsewhere. So that's my first question.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry.
In response to, we would love to put EV charging in all of our car parks. There's a few issues with doing that. One is cost. The infrastructure costs, so we've had a detailed assessment carried out on all our car parks by a couple of EV companies to assess whether there is sufficient power supply from the car parks and whether it's worthwhile for an EV company to invest in that infrastructure and get a return. And sadly, I think 4 car parks were identified of worthwhile doing, but the cost roughly is around about £100,000 per car park to install EV, to install sufficient power supply and all the infrastructure. We are working with Instavolt in terms of Oakwood Hill East car park, which I've mentioned, which is on the industrial estate. So Instavolt are paying for all of those upfront costs in return for us providing two spaces for rapid charging, and we're just working on kind of the final details of that. In terms of the EV charging at the in Langston Road at the retail park, unfortunately they're not part. That car park is not an EFDC car park. It's run by the management company that runs the retail park. We're not directly involved. It has come up a few times about them not being in use, so I take that back and liaise with our asset team that do liaise with kind of the rental and management agreement with that, but unfortunately, we've got no control over those EV charging points at Langston Road.
Okay, we have Councillor Owen. Sorry. Oh, you want to come back? Oh, yes.
Sorry, I've got another issue here about the increase, the 100% increase in charges for 30 minutes. Now, surely we should be encouraging, as a council, small businesses, and I think that charging for the first 30 minutes at all should not happen. We should have free for the first 30 minutes. And if that is not cost effective, maybe increasing slightly the amounts for more than 30 minutes. But I really do think we should be thinking about having free parking for the first 30 minutes, and to increase it by a disproportionate amount compared with the other amounts seems very strange to me. This is a 100% increase from 20 pence to 40 pence. And I don't think that is going to please the traders in the high roads, that people can't just pop in and do their shopping quickly and move on free.
We, as I've said, in terms of consultation, we've liaised with our economic development team on this. Also, we've done quite a lot of research into this, and the modelling that we're proposing in terms of the proposed increases we're confident it won't affect car park occupancy rates, and this is supported by British Parking Association and government research that there is no clear relationship between car parking charges and footfall levels in high streets. So and we've done benchmarking with other authorities. And although it may seem the 20p, I think, as I've said, the car parking tariffs have not increased since 2015. It's a long period. So I think inflation has risen at approximately 2.16% per annum over that period.
So do we know what the sensitivity is of these numbers? You know, how much are they actually influenced in terms of the revenue if we chose to change them? Because I think it's quite significant, isn't it, really?
I don't know. Amelia, would you?
Microphone, yeah.
Sensitivity analysis hasn't been carried out. However, we do have different models on different charges. So we have quite a few models with, for example, 30p for 30 minutes and other kind of tariff structures that we'd be happy to look into further and give details of that if requested.
I'm not quite sure how the changing the tariffs now will be affected. So I think we need to think about that seriously. Sorry, Councillor Kane, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm truly not being flippant here, but I've had this conversation with a number of traders, and I've always said to them, do you really want the trade of a person who can't afford 20p to park or can't afford 40p to park? And I've had that conversation in all seriousness. I don't believe, and statistics back me up, that increasing those charges will not affect football. It just doesn't happen that way.
Go on.
Yes, I can see your point, Councillor Kane, but I know what happens when I just want to pop out for something quickly, and I don't have the cash in my bag anymore because people don't carry cash, and I don't have a 20p piece or money that makes up 20p. You could end up having to pay £1 because you don't have a 20 pence piece in your purse, and so I don't think that's relevant. Whereas, yes.
Anybody want to? Did you want to come back on that? Okay, we've got now Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chairman. Have we looked at doing a yearly fee? Because for me, this point of 20p, I can't tell you how annoyed I get when I want to go get a haircut or whatever, and I have to find 20p and I don't have it, and then I end up not parking or not doing it. Whereas I'd be more than happy to pay, say, I don't know what the fee would be, but £20 for a whole year. You have a pay and display in your car, and you can just park in any car park in the whole district, and I probably don't even pay £20 a year. So actually, if everyone did it, you'd probably be better off, is my first question. My second question is, why does Loughton and Epping and Buckhurst Hill pay more than Waltham Abbey on the tariffs? I mean, I saw there was a note in here about how they have train stations, basically, or tube stations, but it's only on parking up to 2 hours, so no one really gets on the tube just for 2 hours. You're probably going into London for the day, so it just seems a bit strange. And then the final comment, really, is just getting rid of the free parking on a Saturday. I get the point on the 20p and everything, but I just think at this time, should we be getting rid of the free parking on a Saturday? I don't know.
Yeah, so in response to your first point, yeah, we offer season tickets in our car parks, which is kind of a yearly charge. So people can purchase a season ticket and then they can park in pay and display car parks all year round. I think it's historical in terms of the charges being slightly higher than in areas kind of along the central line and that. And yeah, I think that's the only explanation I've got, that its members have chosen to have that slight price difference between those locations.
Yeah.
I guess my first point, and I don't know whether you have the answer to it or not, but the first question wasn't really that you pay for a season ticket, because I'm not talking about, say you work in Loughton and you want to park there for 12 hours of the day, 7 days a week. What I'm saying is more for someone who wants to use the car park every now and then, is there a better method that we can think of to basically do, you know, I want to park for only 2 hours of a month or something like that, where I don't want to take the cash and that sort of stuff?
We can look into options, but I think it's difficult how that would work in reality, because what's stopping someone that is a commuter purchasing one of those tickets? How would we prove that you are only using it for the odd occasion? But yeah, we can look at different pricing, different options.
Thank you. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chairman. James, I wonder if you can help me here. Since 2015, the inflation rate's gone up 12.96%, using your own figures. Yet the first three categories, 20 to 40%, 20 to 40 pence, 100%. The next one, 22%, and the next one, 11.11%. What do I say to my residents when they say, why are you charging double, and what do I get out of it?
I think it's, as I've said before, it's a balance between having a sustainable charging structure so we can continue kind of balance the parking requirements and the needs of car park users, and also the maintenance and operation of the car parks. So it's that balance, that there is a need to kind of generate sufficient income to cover the costs of operating the car parks.
Okay, but I don't think they will accept that, actually, although it's logical. I think some people will look at, rather than coming to Epping even, going to Chelmsford, where you can park free. And I know it's for the sake of 20 pence, but the principle, and where I lived, and a few of us around here in the countryside, I could turn right to Epping or left to Chelmsford, same mileage. There's a difference. Available parking in Chelmsford, not a lot in Epping, and getting less and less. So I don't see it as a happy situation at all. And this is another little nail. If you want people to go to the footfall in places like Ongar, I think something else has got to happen, not just putting the price up for half an hour's parking. Brentwood, nothing for the first half hour.
Okay. Councillor Whitehouse, did you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to welcome the 2 hours parking on a Sunday. I think that would be extremely useful for people going to local churches. I support Councillor Jennings in her request for the free parking at the beginning of the tariff. I think we used to have that, didn't we? I remember a discussion about parents bringing their children to school and, you know, dropping off, trying to encourage them to park in the car park rather than on the road to drop their children off to the infant school when it was at the top of St John's Road. I know we don't want people driving, but that's different. I do think, you know, these little bits, or 20 pence, 30 pence, it does make a difference if you want to pop out and get a paper, and if you're going to go to the place where you've got to stop and go through all the fag of paying, and somewhere where you don't have to. And I'm very concerned about the high street and the vitality of the high street. I like also the suggestion of paying an annual fee in some way, and you can park anywhere instead of having to fiddle around with money or phone calls or whatever when you want to park for a short while. So I think it'd be nice if you could think about that, whether something could be introduced. But I wanted to ask also about the business permits and the residence permits with regard to Epping. Can you tell me how many permits there are? Is there a set number that you issue, and after that people are told no?
In terms of our off-street car parks, resident permits.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the central ones.
Yeah, I'm not aware we've got any, have we? I don't think we've got any in Epping.
No permits, you mean?
Not resident permit, not in off-street car parks, no.
But you do have business ones, don't you? Because I remember taking it up with, on behalf of someone. There are business permits, aren't there, in the Epping car parks?
Yeah, we're just checking. There isn't. No, we did look at this the other day. Again, there aren't. We did have up to a couple of years ago, and I think I can't remember. It might have been Baker's Lane. We did have a number, and then the company relocated from Epping, and they were the ones that took up the business permit. So currently, the two car parks that we operate in Epping are Cottis and Bakers. We've got no residence or business permits in either of those at the moment.
Just to finish off, looking ahead rather, I am concerned about the lack of parking in Epping on behalf of the high street. Thinking about this new multi-storey, I think it's got 330 spaces, which seems primarily for the leisure centre. I suppose you've got to say 100, 150 people at the leisure centre who've had to drive in because there's no alternative at the moment, is there, for many people. I'm just concerned that there's not going to be enough space there for the ordinary people to come to shop by the time you've got the traders parking for the day while they're working and the staff and so forth. I don't expect an answer now, but is something being looked at for that so we don't find in a few years' time that all the parking spaces have gone, there's nothing left for the people who are coming into the shopping?
Yeah, I'll take that back, and yeah, with the multi-storey, that's with Qualis, but I think from our point of view, yeah, we're constantly reviewing kind of parking across the district, so yeah, we will look into that.
Okay, Councillor Balcom.
Thank you, Chair. The point has been raised, but I'd just like to take it a little bit further, actually. The comment in the wards and where I live is basically, why aren't we looking to revive the high streets like Ongar? And by doing something like this, we're going to hinder it, if not stop it. And secondly, if you go, Ian has already mentioned it, if you go to a few other like Brentwood, you've got an hour's free parking to go. So why are we being different? Chelmsford's the same. It does seem that we're making people go away from our high streets. And if we want to do something, this is where we should start.
I suppose my response is, as I've mentioned all before, the consultation we've done and kind of the research that's out there said that there is no clear relationship between car parking and footfall levels in that. And I think with high streets, there needs to be a reason for people to go there and that. So it's not just solely around the car parking charges, it's what the high streets have to offer to people. And high streets are now, as we all know, used in a different way to how they used to be used.
Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Just something I'd like to contribute to this particular topic, because I fully understand where people are coming from, of course I do. But there is an important... I beg your pardon? Yes, of course. Is that better? No worries. I shall shout. Yeah, of course I understand, but there is an important consideration in this discussion. The car park revenue is a very important revenue stream to this council. We have to be careful that we don't damage that revenue stream to the point of having to increase council tax. It's just to be considered.
Yeah, I think there's a trade-off, isn't there, between the people paying for the use of the services that they want to use and everybody paying for the services that certain people want to use. So I think Councillor Kane's point is well made. Trying to sort of sum up, we have got one more question. We've got Was there anybody else that wanted to raise? I know that you wanted to raise something, Councillor Morgan.
A couple of questions, Jane. Are all machines going over to credit card only payment or debit card? Or can you still pay cash?
No, there's no intention to do that at the moment. You still can pay cash in that. Yeah.
Right, one other question, and probably Councillor Kane has heard this from me before. Our parking here is getting less and less. You know, it won't be long before we'll be able to come into a meeting, won't be able to park. I'm thinking more about my licensing committee who meet every month. 4 of us have to park here somewhere. Is there any chance of a parking permit for councillors in the public car park? Councillor Kane might be able to answer that as well. Thank you.
I can't give you a definitive answer, but I can promise to take it back to Cabinet to discuss.
Okay.
I can add to that because yes. So yeah, we're well aware that kind of fairly soon there will be a significant reduction in the parking here at the Civic. So we are working. We've been working on a number of alternatives and possible solutions, and one of them may involve utilising the public car parks in Epping, but I think, as Councillor Kane has said, I think a final decision would have to be approved by members.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is an important issue because as councillors will come in for meetings at certain times of the day, most of if it's sort of 10 o'clock or 9:30, most of the space is going to be taken. So if they're here for a critical meeting, as Councillor said about licensing, they're going to be here for a meeting at a particular time because there's members of the public coming in. So we can't not have facilities available for people to park. And I think that's important. Councillor Brooks, you wanted to raise something.
Yeah, apologies. I hope I'm speaking loudly enough. I know dynamics acoustically aren't always brilliant in this building. Just a couple of things. I'd like to add something to what Councillor Owen has said, because this has been raised by residents in my road, but it would apply to many others, not just in Loughton. A lot of roads have got the 1 to 2 hour restrictions. In my road, you can't park between 2 and 3 on one side. In other roads, it's sometimes both sides. And there's this great rush of hairdressers who seem to appear at about 10 to 2 to move the cars. For people who are retired or working at home, and there are more people working at home, they did appreciate the sort of non-enforcement that applied during the pandemic, but it is a problem now, and they have come to me and said, a bit like Councillor Owen has said, could there not be a system where local residents or council taxpayers, they end up trying to go for walks in the forest, and now you have to pay in the forest car parks in most places, but they wondered if you could pay so much and it would just apply for a couple of hours so they could go out, still move the car at that time and go and do something locally, but just you paid the sum for the year. But it just applied to, enough time for Councillor Owen to get his hair cut or whatever, or take his child to a swimming lesson, that sort of thing. I think it would be great if we could be flexible, and it would be a bit more income, because my bet is people actually wouldn't use it all the year anyway. Secondly, really, it's about the Sainsbury's car park, which is heavily used in Loughton. I wondered if you could tell us, because I think we have got quite a few people in that car park with businesses who have got permits. Could you have the statistics on that, please, Amelia?
Is that our car park?
In the Sainsbury's car parks, we only offer season tickets.
So there are no actual businesses that have bought up several places?
That's right. We don't offer any residence or business permits in the Sainsbury's car parks, season tickets only.
Does this sort of payment arrangement, some sort of prepayment card like the old phone cards, so you can actually have a card that you have and then you swipe it on, obviously technology is going to be able to support it, but something that people can buy, pay for and top up so that they don't actually have to have small change available to them. Is that something that could be looked at, or is it not practical?
Yeah, we can look into it and look into the feasibility. Yeah, and see, like you say, I think we would need the technology to be able to support that. And it could be an upgrade on different kind of, I don't know if they're a bit like the Oyster swiping. If there was, I can see considerable cost being involved, but it's something we can definitely look into.
Councillor Kane?
Yeah, thanks. I'll just pick up on that last point, actually. If you were going to do for a prepayment card and then put in the necessary equipment to monitor it and take off the charge and everything, you'd be just as well to put in a credit card touchpad and work it that way, which has probably got similar sort of big cost to it anyway. On the on-street parking, of course, that's outside of this remit. That'll be a NEP concern. I can tell you that NEP have moved their policies now so that they no longer promote the 1 hour parking restriction and are pressing for residents parking permits, which is effectively what you're asking for, paying a fee to be able to park in that area. And that's now the preference at NEP. We're currently, there's one particular road that there's a bit of a dispute about what they actually want to do. But yes, by default now, if you were to come to NEP and say we want some kind of restriction because we've got problems with commuter parking, then it would be a residence parking permit that would be promoted above and beyond the 1 hour one. Because the 1 hour one was obviously introduced to limit commuter parking. Commuter parking, as we know, has reduced quite a bit, and it's now seen that the residence parking permit is the fairest way of doing it, because, as you say, you can then just pay the fee to be able to park in the street in your area.
Can I just come back on that? Councillor Kane, yes, as a ward councillor for Alderton, which had a lot of Debden commuters, I very much pushed for residence parking. But there was something of an uproar about 3 years ago in many of the streets. So we've got this situation in several streets either side of Debden station, where we've got some streets that have enforcement and parking, and then you can just walk a short distance and you haven't, and they're all over the pavements. Yeah, but I do appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, that's an issue with displacement parking. As soon as you put parking restrictions in one street, it just moves to another. We've got the same in Chigwell, and I think that's the same in Epping as well. I'm just wondering what our recommendations are to Cabinet. One thing I did want to pick up on was the schools issue about not parking around schools, and I don't know whether there's anything that we're actually doing actively looking at how there is some sort of alternative parking for parents dropping children off at schools, but not within the proximity of the schools. I know something that was brought up to Councillor Scott. Is that something that we're actively looking at? Yeah,
it is something that we're looking at, and as Councillor Scott and Councillor Kane said, again, because that's on street, it sits with NEP, and we kind of have regular meetings with NEP, and Councillor Kane and I have been discussing a list of topics that we really want to push and press NEP on, that we feel that they need to improve on, and high on that list is the schools parking. So there's a 3PR scheme that NEP operate around the schools, which is safer parking, and they work with the school. And one of the things is a walking bus, and I know that we've explored it, Councillor Whitehouse, with Ivy Chimneys. We've looked at it Staples Road as well. So I think the difficult with our district is with the safer bus, where you find a suitable place for the parents to park and then the children walk, is finding a suitable place where it's safe to park and then it's safe for the children to walk to school. With Staples Road, we offered Traps Hill Car Park that we could offer something there, but I think that was due to start just as the pandemic hit, so I don't think that's been taken forward, but it's something that we can take forward with NEP, and happy to report back here.
Okay. Just wanted to round up, I realised the time. What is the recommendations we're taking to Cabinet then? Are we happy with the charges, or are we saying they're the double price from 20 to 40p is too high at that point? So, Councillor Hadley.
I think there ought to be more coordination between the budgetary concerns of this, of the income, and the desire to regenerate the high streets. It seems they're working apart, as it were. And I think somehow, I don't know what the model was, but certainly if you charged nothing for the first half hour and loaded it somewhere else, there must be a level where it balances out. And I'm sure you know what that is. I don't. But if it hasn't been done, maybe somebody ought to look at it and say, we can give free parking, something as Brentwood does, but the cost would be this on something else on Saturday or Sunday or whatever.
Okay, so is that something that can be looked at before it goes to Cabinet? And yeah, so we're not happy with the initial charges. But again, I think there is an issue in sort of Epping, Loughton and Buckhurst Hill where we're looking at comparisons between London Underground charges as well. Is that something that we have to bear in mind? If we're that much cheaper than the Underground, then we're going to see a lot more commuter parking. Is that?
I would say in the lower bands that's less of an issue.
Yeah, because that's short term. Yeah, it's the higher charges. Okay, Councillor, one last question.
Yeah, just a quick point. I personally would like to see maybe a discount for electric cars, because should we just make it free to encourage, given the problems we've got with the clear air zone?
Yeah, there is something in the report about that, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's, the report does mention it, but it's something that we're working on. Again, it's having the right solution, and there are initiatives around the green number plates, but I think that relies on cameras, and we haven't got that smart technology in our car parks yet. I think we could have a system where EV vehicles register with us, but that would be extremely resource intensive. But so at the moment, it's something we're exploring and looking into. How can we make it work practically? We hope to learn lessons from Cottis Lane when that's operational, because I believe that will have smart parking technology and will have a number of EV parking bays, so we can learn kind of how that operates. But yeah, I can't give any more answer than that, but it's definitely something that we will explore further and look into.
Yeah, it was something that was actually considered a year or so back with automatic number plate recognition, so you'd need to have that. Otherwise, a manual system of recording people's registrations and details is going to be fairly labour intensive, and it's going to be counterproductive. I think that was the consideration.
Yeah, and legally we're not allowed ANPR as a local authority, so that is a very complex issue. I don't quite understand why local authorities can't use it, but that's central government's policy and legislation at the moment that if it's local authority land and local authority managed car parking, we can't use that technology.
We can keep pushing for that. I think that's something.
I think it will change.
Yeah, I think we need to keep pushing for that sort of system so that we can actually recognise those specific people that we want to either reduce the tariff or increase the tariff. But I think that's not available now. So, Councillor Kane.
Chairman, thank you. I just want some clarification on your recommendation. Are we seeing what we can do with the numbers to achieve the free 30 minutes, or are we looking to just reduce or eliminate the increase on the 30 minutes? What's our target?
Councillor Hadley, you were pushing this
I
one.
would like to push this down to free parking in the town centres for half an hour. And maybe the traders would like that as well, and maybe they like to chip in towards it. I don't know. But failing that, just keeping things as they are might be better than putting it up and lots of questions being asked and lots of unhappy residents around the place. Yep.
I mean, if we're looking at the longer stay, obviously that's where the commuters are, you know, that's where we could probably look at that sort of area to actually say, well, if people want to stay for more than 2 hours or something, or 3 hours, then they should be paying more for it because they need that time. So, is that something that we could do some sensitivity on? Yeah? Yeah, I think it's that sort of issue. That don't penalise the people that want short term because they're the local commuters and they're the local users and the people that are using it on a regular basis. But those people that want to stay and use our car parks for other, and if they're going to get a cheaper tariff than they would going to TfL, then we should make sure that we're competitive. Councillor Owen.
Sorry to come out, but the TfL one, it's an all-day charge in Loughton anyway, and it's like £6 for the whole day, right? So I think definitely at the sort of plus 2 hours, you could increase the charges. Personally, I would like to see an hour free myself, because I think half an hour is probably too short by the time you've parked and walked to where you want to go and whatever. But, you know, that's to be debated. And the point earlier on whether it's from the council tax or the car parks, I mean, I never take a bus, but I pay council tax towards buses. So, you know, there's a massive argument to be had about that if you want to go down that road. But
yeah, I do know that Redbridge were offering free parking for half an hour, but they're now charging for it. So some of our London boroughs, neighbouring boroughs, are charging. So there is a precedent for it. But let's see whether we can make it work and keep some of the tariffs down. Okay, thanks very much. I think we've debated that long enough. Well, I think we've got enough information to be able to go forward. Thank you very much, James, for that report. Let's move on. We are now looking at Deborah, yes, improving payment options for leaseholders. This is something which is quite an interesting topic, considering the refurbishment that's going on a number of our council estates. So it's pages 29 to 52. Deborah, can you introduce the paper?
Good afternoon, good evening, members. And as the Chair pointed out, this paper is about improving payment options for leaseholders. There are a number of recommendations that we'd like you to agree this evening, which will then be presented to Cabinet. And those are that the Council review its current corporate debt policy. And the purpose of this is to allow increased payment terms for leaseholders. The second one is that approval is given to a menu of payment options, and that is dependent on the amount of the charge for the major works. And that approval is given for the repayment plan to a sum of the £12,500 or above be secured as a voluntary charge on the payment, on the property. So this is because if we are given an extended repayment period, the council would want some security in return for offering that longer payment period. There would be an administration cost for that, which would be £150, and that there is an agreement to an interest charge for the leasehold payment option based on 0.25 above the average council lending, borrowing rate, and that the delegated authority be given to the Director of Housing and Property to consider to consider any applications from leaseholders on the ground of extreme hardship to vary the length of the repayment period. So what that means is if the total repayment period was, for example, 84 months, but the leaseholder in question was suffering severe hardship, that consideration be given to extending that period of repayment, and that the delegated authority is given to the Director of Housing and Property in conjunction with the Cabinet Member, Portfolio Member for Housing and Community, to agree payment plans on a project-by-project basis where leaseholders' estimated bills are likely to be in excess of £12,500. So it's well understood that properties have a finite life cycle, and in order to maximise the lifespan of our blocks, it is vital that we carry out regular improvement works. And as many of you will be aware, that the process of improving estates is ongoing and it's cyclical. So it's done, for example, you might have one element of work which is undertaken every 7 years, for example. We are now reaching the stage where a number of our estates require significant investment and major works, and it's essential that we do this if we are going to create great places where people want to live and improve the lives, not just for our residents but also for our leaseholders, and therefore we bring these proposals today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deborah. Have we got any questions? Councillor Bassett.
You do tend to look at me, don't you?
Well, I thought you'd already asked, we could ask one. So.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with this because I have spoken to a few shopkeepers that have been trying to get their place attractive to the public, because the street scene is changing, how people are using shops, and people have got to like where they're going, and therefore people have had to invest. And I know that does cause an incredible stress, because you've got to find the money, get all the work done, and then it's a slow repayment period. So I don't particularly have any problems with this at all. I think it shows that we understand the problem and that we do care. And we do need to have a bit of skin in the game to say we're not going to lose because of it. They're not going to say, oh, well, I'll have 5 years and not bother paying you. You know, I don't think we'll have people like that, but we're giving them every chance. I think that's the only way to put it.
Okay, thank you. Microphone.
Oh, sorry,
Councillor Haddon.
Thank you, Chair. I have no problems either. Just one little point that came up in the report about the residential assets are reaching the point where major investment is required. Is that because we've been slack on investing, or is there some natural cycle where you don't do anything until 5 years, 10 years or whatever?
So yes, there is a natural cycle where works are carried out. So we know that a lot of our estates were built in sort of, you know, the 60s, 70s. So it's now getting to that point that we need to make major investment in those properties to prolong the lives of the properties. So yes, it's just the cycle. It's just the cycle of how it works with assets.
Yeah, and I think this was brought into sharp focus with the redevelopment at Limes Farm and I presume some of the other council estates, where when the actual value of the work that was needed was realised, it's like, well, how do the leaseholders pay for it? You know, obviously the council tenants have been covered because that's the council picks up, but those leaseholders that have actually purchased leases on council property, they're going to be faced with those bills, and they're quite significant. So I think this is a really valuable way of actually supporting residents in the best way possible. They will have to bear the cost, but if they can bear it in a deferred way, then that actually works. Councillor Owen.
I don't know if I've got the wrong end of the stick here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the council's going to be taking credit risk on these people, and we're saying we're going to charge 0.25% above our lending rate, which is super cheap anyway, And when you look at the benchmarking data, everyone else is doing like 5%. So it seems to me, whilst I want to obviously help people, it seems super cheap. And if it was me, I would take it because it's so cheap to go and invest it somewhere else.
I mean, the payment option will only be available for those people who've got the charge on the property. So 4.12 highlights the amounts and the period of repayment which we're proposing. However, I absolutely take your point, and you're absolutely right. It is a very reasonable offer we are making. But what I would say is that we as a council are very keen to realise our vision, which is to create great places where people want to live. We want to create harmonious communities with residents and leaseholders, which is why we've decided to propose that low interest rate.
Councillor.
In the cases where we don't take a charge, because I think it was said only over 12.5k, is there a danger that we take on loads of credit risk, we end up with lots of losses, and we end up with lots of losses, I suppose?
So we have a corporate debt policy, and we would chase the debt, if you pardon the phrase. So in that respect, it would be like any other debt which the council holds. We carried out some research and felt that 12,500 was reasonable. However, if members tonight would recommend that amount was lower, then that's fine. I'm happy to amend the report accordingly when it goes to Cabinet.
Councillor, did you want to propose?
It's not so much the amount to me, it's just that I feel it's too cheap. If we were to maybe tier it so that you can get a cheaper amount for a lesser amount, and then if you go above that, we charge more. I just feel like we're taking on quite a bit of risk here, or maybe we're not, but you guys can decide. But my view is it's too cheap.
I think this is something that is of benefit to those leaseholders that are leasing council properties. But again, if there is a risk associated with that, how do we mitigate that risk?
So the way we mitigate the risk is by applying our corporate debt policy and following up that debt, and using the tools within the policy to make sure that debt is repaid. As I've said, if members are minded, I'm quite happy to put forward an increased interest rate. So if you look on under point 4.12, there is actually an interest-free period anyway that we're proposing, and the interest-bearing period, which is in column 3, would obviously follow after that interest-free period. So I am, as I said, quite happy to propose that we increase that if that's what members wish.
I think this is something that obviously needs to be considered by Cabinet in terms of the final policy, whether they're prepared to underwrite that risk.
May I suggest then that in the paper which goes to Cabinet, that I suggest a couple of different options in terms of the interest rate, so it can be debated.
I think that would be really helpful. That way. Councillor Bassett.
So just been having a thought here is where we loan people money, which is what we're doing, are we actually checking they have the ability to pay before we put the charge on it? And do we look at their books to say your revenue is this, so therefore you will have the ability to pay? What do we do is if we've got to do improvements and it's liable as a leaseholder and they will not be able to afford it, what would be the situation in those cases?
So just to clarify, this isn't a loan. We don't offer that facility. What this is a deferred payment period. So what would happen is the council would pay the bill, if you like, and then offer leaseholders the opportunity to pay over a longer period of time. In terms of leaseholders, and if they defaulted on the payments or if they weren't able to pay the charges, we would have a charge on the property, and when the property was sold, we would realise that cost. That would come back to the council from the property sale.
Councillor Brooks? Was it Councillor Jennings? Oh, is it? Oh. Oh. Come on, let's not argue about it.
I'm sure we were both going to raise the same point, that some of your leaseholders are going to be pushed to their limits when they take out their lease. They are going to have budgeted in their budget for household bills and regular bills. They will not be expecting a large lump sum to have to suddenly go out of their budget. So I would like to see this charge on the property made available to all your tenants if they are not managing to budget for an extra amount of money. So going down from the 12, going down to the 7.5. And I think
I don't think I understand the question. What are you saying? This is only for those leaseholders where the work is...
Well, it's not only... Your leaseholders are not only shopkeepers, they're going to be people who may be struggling on a lower budget. And, you know, I would like the facility to... the same facility that you're offering to the people owing... that would be owing over 12,500. I'd like that to be also, you know, the people between 7,500 and 12,500 have the same facility.
I'm happy to take that forwards. Leaseholders generally do know that they will be charged for major works. They're given a 5-year estimate when they first purchase their property, and it should be made clear to them by their solicitor that any additional major works which are carried out, they will be charged a proportion of those works, and leaseholders already pay charges because we're you know, undertaking works on a regular basis. So hopefully it wouldn't come as a surprise.
I think often these people perhaps don't quite understand the paperwork initially.
They should. I know this happens elsewhere. It happens in Redbridge because my daughter's been faced with a large bill as a leaseholder. So I think this is part of the lease, the terms and conditions under which they sign the lease. Whether they realise it or not, it's in the lease and they sign that document. So I think we are being helpful to them, but I don't think we can take the responsibility away from them in terms of the fact that private people have to pay for upkeep of their properties, and if they've leased the property, they have some liability. Sorry, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much for letting me speak on this as a non-committee member. That's the main reason I came tonight. Was these charges, partly because when I was a very green councillor, I'd only been elected a few weeks, someone came to me. We were re-roofing some of the properties in Oakwood Hill Estate, and I had a single mother who'd really stretched herself on a mortgage and got involved in working out a payment plan. The problem is, I think, which Deborah has referred to, is when people buy on a lease, I don't think some solicitors are totally straight with people when they're buying local authority flats, like the ones in Oakwood Hill Estate, like the Limes Farm Estate, that they are likely to come in for quite hefty bills And I think actually the rates that you're proposing, I would support these rates because I just know how stretched many people are, and also how difficult it is for them personally to understand that half the people in the block are not paying anything and they are quite stretched. So if anything, I would ask that the limit was dropped a bit, perhaps. I'm not sure how much we can... I can see why Councillor Owen, particularly with his knowledge of money, which is much better than mine, comes at it from that point of view, but I just know how pushed many people are on those blocks when they re-roof, and also desperately, at this other point, they do need money spent on them.
They do.
Really.
Yeah. It's a balance. And
So
think
I would support this report.
It's a balance with these things, and whilst we can be as helpful as possible, there is the cost of money that we have to fund, and the risk that we have to take as well, as being able to support our residents. Councillor Whitehouse, you wanted to raise something?
Thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 4.1, I was surprised and concerned to read that out of the 1,082 leaseholders, 611 are resident owner-occupiers and 471 are non-resident appropriately subletting. I mean, this seems really unfortunate that these houses or properties were council-owned and let at a reasonable rent to residents. They're sold and then they're on the private market rents. And it just doesn't seem right. I mean, we want to support people who want to buy their own house and become owner-occupiers, but to buy and just rent it out just doesn't seem right. Is there no legislation or any regulation that we can just allow people to buy their council house if they're going to live in it, but not if they're just going to rent it out? Because it doesn't help the local housing situation, does it?
Thank you for your comments. Unfortunately, not. There is nothing we can do to stop that happening in our estates. However, part of the report does refer to the payment plans and us offering those only to residents that are living in their properties and not those that have subletted them. I've sublet them, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? No? Okay, well, I think you've got some useful feedback. If that can be built into the report that goes to Cabinet. Do we need to consider any of the items on the front? So what will be about recommendations? Consider decisions required. Are we making decisions here? Corporate policy to increase payments. Do we need to consider these items?
Agree the recommendations.
Or, sorry?
Agree the recommendations.
Just agree the recommendations?
We actually came up with suggestions of some of the areas that need to be reviewed,
which
I'm
right.
sure Deborah's got, but we agree with the report in principle.
Yes, that was what I was going to say. In principle, we agree with the report. You've had some feedback on some of the issues that we need to raise, that need to be brought into the report and brought to the attention of Cabinet. And I think that's as far as we can go this evening. So thank you very much for bringing that report. Okay, let's move on. So we are now looking at item 10, which is the dates for the future meetings. The 30th of January and the 15th of March. We haven't got at the moment any additional meetings that have been scheduled.
There are no additional meetings scheduled, is there?
Not yet. Okay, so with those dates, we are now on to item 11, which is exclusion of public and press. And we have one confidential item, so I will read the notice to... Yeah? No, we haven't got there yet. To consider whether under section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press should be excluded from the meeting, the items of business set out below on the grounds that they will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the following paragraphs of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Act as amended, or are confidential under the Act 100A, 100 brackets A brackets 2. So we will suspend the webcast, and we will exclude any members of the public if there are any. And we will go into private session. So we suspended the webcast.